What I'm about to show you will change how you use ChatGPT in your business. Most sellers still treat it like a search engine, so they never get to see how powerful it really is. In this video, I'll show you how to actually make it work in your operations, from writing the right prompts to building your own AI workspace and agents. So by the end, ChatGPT will finally feel like a real team member. Let's dive in. Did you know that ChatGPT has its own official prompt optimizer? Let me show you how it works. So if we hop in here into the optimizer and leave a prompt we would usually use, let's say I want to launch a product on Amazon, here's the keyword list, help me generate a listing, and then we click optimize, it generates something that looks like this. It's completely different. There are suddenly some roles and objectives, task checklist, instructions, even some context. So suddenly it turns it into a prompt that would generate much better output. But not only that, it also allows us to review the changes and the reasoning behind these changes. So we can read why it's making these changes and learn ourselves how to prompt better in the future. So why should we even care about getting better at prompting? Well, a lot of people, including me, when ChatGPT 5 was released, the latest model, were complaining that the model is not as good as the previous one, the GPT 4.0. Well, and they were right, because with the old prompting techniques, ChatGPT 5 actually performs worse than the previous model. But it doesn't necessarily mean that GPT-5 is worse. It's actually quite the opposite. It's built with AI agents in mind, which means that it's much better at following specific instructions. Well, and when we don't provide the instructions and the context, we are not going to get a good output. So that's why the prompt optimizer helps us optimize our prompts, which is very useful. But more importantly, it also teaches us why it's making these changes. So as you can see, it's actually optimizing it for this specific model. In this case, the reasoning behind the change, it's adding conceptual checklist as a planning step supporting GPT-5's plan first rule. So it understands how the new model works and generates the prompts in a way to generate the best output possible from this particular model. And as you probably know, all large language models like ChatGPT or Claude actually predict words based on patterns and context. And this is very important because we need to remember that the clearer the context, the better the prediction. In other words, a simple rule is that your AI outputs is only as good as your prompt. In other words, garbage in, garbage out. And I always like to remind myself that this is actually like hiring and onboarding a new employee. Compare the performance giving someone 3 words versus giving them a full step-by-step SOP. It's exactly that. So the first step, before we dive into the advanced things I'm going to teach you today, is actually understand prompt engineering on a high level. So when structuring your prompts, essentially how you interact with ChatGPT, I like to think about this as building blocks. And this simple formula will kind of give you the framework for writing prompts as an expert. So first of all, we should always specify the role. Who should ChatGPT act as? Then we specify the task. What is the outcome? What is our objective? And what are the steps? As you can see, this is kind of similar as writing an SOP for an employee. Then we give it some context. What do we already know? What should be considered? Are there any constraints? And lastly, the format. Like, what should the output look like? Is it a table? Is it a bullet list? Is it an SOP? Is it a JSON? Whatever that is, we need to specify that. And for that, actually, we have from OpenAI their cookbook. And if we go here, there is a full prompting guide. You don't need to read this. I actually pinpoint the most important points for you to remember to kind of get the 80-20. But if you are interested, there are more and more specifics to understand how the model works. And more importantly, there is actually the prompt optimizer. And I will include the link down in the description so you can use it yourself. But the most important step when prompting and interacting with ChatGPT 5 is triggering the chain of thought reasoning. It's essentially a sequential thinking mode that will unlock the deeper logic, fewer mistakes, and more structured output. So let me show you how to trigger the chain of thought reasoning. The first one is a router nudge. Let me explain what it actually means. Because every time you send a prompt to ChatGPT, imagine that there is an invisible router that decides how much effort the AI is going to spend on your prompt to give you the output. Let's say if you ask for a simple recipe, it will show you low effort to do that because it's very simple, right? But if it's a little bit more complex, it might use medium effort, and if it's very complex task that it needs to think deeply about, it will use high effort, and that will trigger the chain of thought reasoning. And we can use these phrases in our prompts to actually trigger this sequential thinking mode. And it can be truly as simple as this, as including these phrases at the end of your prompt, like plan and outline first, think step by step, or even just think deeply about this. And you can test this yourself to see the difference. If you, let's say, I want to expand from US to Europe, I need your help to create my action plan. Before creating the plan, show me your thought process and outline how you would do that. And this pretty much guarantees that the AI is going to spend high effort in order to do that. Because you need to keep in mind that on their end, it's a business and what they want to optimize their cost. So in most cases, they will try to send it to the low effort model, right? They don't want to waste that because you are paying subscription, you are not paying per action. So they will, in most cases, send it to the low model because most people are simply not going to specify and do these things to actually trigger the high level of reasoning. So the router nudge is the first one. But the second one, which you can activate by clicking a button, it's actually extended thinking. When we can activate the thinking mode deliberately, so it actually activates the internal reasoning before it crafts its replies. And this is extremely useful for complex and strategic tasks like most of the things that you will use in business. So you will simply do it like this. Most people interact with ChatGPT like this, that they leave the model on auto. And this is essentially leaving it up to the router to decide how long to think. And as we said, it's a business. So in most cases, if they can, they will send it to the low effort. But what we are going to do, we are going to switch to thinking. And not only that, we are going to switch to extended thinking, right? This might take it a minute before you get your answer. But really, we don't care about the speed as much in most cases. We care about the accuracy. So let me show you what's actually the difference if we compare the exact same prompt and we ask ChatGPT, how should an Amazon seller price their product to stay competitive but still profitable? And this is with the quick answer, with the low effort. So you get some start with cost clarity, analyze competitor pricing, set your initial price. Like, this is good advice, but it's very surface level, right? This is kind of like, yeah, here you go. That's kind of what you ask for, right? But no, you're a business owner. You want more detail. You want something more tangible, more strategic. So if we switch to the extended mode, extended thinking, look at the difference. Exact same prompt. He thought for 25 seconds, right? I wasted 30 seconds of my life, but I got this level of detail. Suddenly, we are getting build unit economics first, right? We are getting the formulas how to calculate everything. Position against the market, choose your lane, our value, parity, or premium product. Test price deliverables. It also accounts for price elasticity, right? It's very advanced. And it's kind of the same answer, right? He's answering the same question, but in a very, very different way. So if there are only a few things you would remember to get better outputs almost instantly, just use these phrases, plan and outline first, and use the extended thinking mode. That will unlock way, way better output. And I want to also stress out that it may seem that longer prompts are better prompts, but that isn't necessarily the case, right? Because as we talked about this, we care about the context, right? How much information we provide and how specific we are with our instructions. But it also has a downside, right? We don't want to dilute our requests, right? If you have these 2-3 pages of prompts, you need to understand that there is such a thing as a context window in your chat, and it kind of dilutes the information, right? So rather than thinking in longer prompts, think about being as specific as possible. Now, we understand the basics of prompt engineering, kind of the 80-20. But I know what you're probably thinking, right? You don't have time to do this every time you interact with ChatGPT, to write prompts in this structure, to go into your prompt optimizer to create the perfect prompt. You don't have time to do that. And I completely understand. That's why we will introduce this concept of context stacking. Because in most cases, the context doesn't have to change as much. That's why we will introduce these prompts. The first one is a master prompt. This one doesn't really change because it is us introducing ourselves to the AI. So the AI knows who it's interacting with. This, in other words, is our identity. The master prompt, this defines who we are, our perspective, our goals, and our preferences for communication style, right? Let's say I'm a founder of an Amazon private label brand. We're doing 5 million a year. My goal is to get it to 8 figures and exit. These are the products I sell. These are the marketplaces. This is my team, and so on. So the AI has the context. We do it once, and then we get the benefit of this, right? And when we are creating something we will reuse again and again, well, we can spend the extra time to optimize the prompt and make sure that it is as accurate as possible. Now, if we go a little bit deeper, we will have the system prompt. This is the role for the AI. In this prompt, we define who the AI is, the function, the responsibilities, and the boundaries of the agent, right? Because before we assign some task, we need to do two things. Who am I? What are my goals, right? But also, who are you as the AI, right? Maybe you are my content strategist. Maybe you are my tax advisor, right? It is important to specify and clarify the role of the AI for the interaction. And lastly, we have the user prompt, right? So that is the task, and that defines what the AI should do, the goal, the steps, and the examples. So as you can see, most of this 5-part formula, the role, the context, the constraints, and so on, is already predefined in our reusable prompts, right? And of course, this structure, I want to show you how to build this. And I call this your AI workspace, right? And we are going to cover this now, how to build this out for you and your Amazon business, and ideally for every single person on your team, because the leverage is just not there for you. The real leverage comes from everyone on the team using this and building out this foundation, right? So let's take a look at it. When we want to build our AI workspace, how does this actually work? Because we're talking master prompt, system prompt, user prompts. Where does it go? Like, should I always write everything here? Well, no, because ChatGPT actually has multiple functions that we can leverage that are basically built for this, what we just discussed, right? So the first one is personalization. Maybe some of you already tried this. When you go into settings, you will notice that there is a section for personalization, right? So there is some style and tone, how the AI should communicate, right? You can use the default or robot and so on. I actually, for business purposes, I prefer the robot. And then there are some custom instructions. Here, I would not use this as a space for master prompt. I would actually use this to really clarify the communication style I prefer. So let me explain. If we go here, you're going to build this together. In the personalization style, I would include some of these sentences that actually explains what we like. Because as we said, by default, the ChatGPT is actually designed to kind of agree with you, to make you feel good, to predict what you want to hear, which is the exact opposite of what we want in business, right? We want it to be honest, not reassuring. We want it to be direct, unfiltered, no fluff, no validation, right? So we first need to set this up for most of our interactions, right? So for example, I prepared some of these sentences here for you. You can test it out for yourself. But I, for example, use just these. Prioritize accuracy over agreeability. Be honest, not reassuring. Be direct and unfiltered. No fluff, no validation. And this helps me to get much better outputs across all of my conversations. But you need to keep in mind that this personalization applies to all of your interactions. And sometimes it might not be desirable, right? Maybe we are creating marketing content. We don't want this, right? We want a different style of language. So ideally, this level of personalization I would include in the master prompt or the system prompt, which we are going to write later on, right? So you can leave these empty. Then we have the nickname, your occupation, and so on. So this is not as important and not going to change how we interact with the AI. But now, finally, we are getting to the important part, which is the master prompt, right? This is giving ChatGPT a permanent understanding of who you are and how you operate, right? Ideally in the context of business, if you use it for business, right? So this master prompt should include things like this: your role in the business, you are the founder, but if your employees should do this as well, which I highly recommend. It can be, I'm a supply manager for this brand doing 5 million a year. These are my responsibilities. These are my KPIs and so on, right? So there will be some business overview. What is the business about? The niche, the revenue level, team size, goals and priorities, what success looks like, and potentially tools and data sources you work with. It's like I use with Helium 10, I work with Google Sheets to manage my inventory and so on. So these specifics about you, right? Now, this might be quite intimidating to actually build this, right? Because it's a lot of things, and I don't know how the master prompt should look like. Well, that's why we have AI. It can kind of help us to create this prompt for future conversations. So let me show you something, right? If we have this prompt, just a basic prompt I would write when I want to create my master prompt. I'm a founder of an Amazon brand selling Italian-made shirts for men. I need your help writing my master prompt. It should include details about my business, my goals, and my responsibilities so we can reuse it in future conversations. Ask me questions to clarify everything you need to write it for me. And since this is something important I will reuse, I kind of want to use it as a meta prompt, right? So I want to take this prompt I wrote, and first, before I start my interaction, I want to go into the prompt optimizer and optimize this prompt, right? Just to make sure, just to try this out a bit. It will take a few seconds to load. And in the meantime, what we will do once we have this prompt, just to remember, we will save it as a document, right? Because we will be working with this master prompt in our future conversations. So we need to remember that. But I also like to create essentially a meta project where I will store my prompt generators, because we will be generating a master prompt, we will be generating systems prompt and so on. So what I like to do is to hop in ChatGPT, go into new project. It's very simple. Just choose some nice icon, and here I will go prompt generator, right? Here I create the prompt generator where I will be generating all of my master prompts and the system prompts. And here, when I create the project, I can go into add instructions. And don't worry, we will get into a little bit more detail later on, but for now, I want to include it here. And include a very simple instructions. You are an expert prompt engineer specializing in creating prompts for AI language models, particularly ChatGPT 5 thinking model, output final prompt in markdown format, right? So this is what we will do. And also it helps us store all of the conversations for future reference, right? If we want to change our master prompt, we can find the chat in this project, so we can make the necessary changes. And now we can see that he made the change to our prompt where we were requesting to help us with the master prompt. And as you can see, he made some changes, right? As you can see, he made it added a little bit more detail, right? So I need your help to craft a comprehensive master prompt that will serve as a reusable, authoritative reference in future conversation. Begin with a concise checklist and so on. So now I can take this, I like it, right? And I would put this into my prompt generator. So I can start generating my, my master prompt. And here I would recommend to spend some time, spend hour or two to actually make sure that it includes all of the details, kind of refine it a few times, which of course I'm not going to do live. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pretend like I answer all of his questions, right? Sometimes when you click as he's thinking, you will see the thought process behind it, which is also interesting sometimes to actually see how the AI works, right? So he is thinking to create master prompt, final prompt creation, right? So you can see the thought process, and I think this is helpful because now it's clear that we triggered the chain of thought, reasoning, right? So we will wait a bit for him to come up with the questions. We will be answering a bunch of questions. So once we answer them, he will be able to generate our final master prompt. And once we do that, we will take the next step, which is creating the system prompts for ChatGPT. So let's wait for a bit. And now we can see what he came up with, right? So here's the plan and the deliverable. I will build a checklist, capture brand snapshot, set objectives, define KPIs and target guidelines, map constraints, and so on. So now he start asking us a bunch of questions, right? Target customer, what is the price of the brand and so on, our markets and channels, the brand positioning, one line, top 3 differentiators, competitor you benchmark, margin model, right? So I can update some data so he gets as much context as possible, and then he will create the master prompt. Here you can kind of see what the master prompt will look like once we give him all of the information. And as you can also notice that he includes it as a code. And this is an important thing because here, output final prompt in Markdown format. The Markdown format, you may notice that he actually did it here as well. That is using just the hashtags, which essentially means that he's creating headlines, right? This is how the AI works. So it helps us to understand what is a headline, what is a text, and so on. So when we request a Markdown format, he already kind of creates these separators, what is the role and so on. And you also may notice that he's kind of following what we discussed before. What is the optimal structure of a prompt? The role, act as, and so on. So here we will just say, for the purpose of this video, that assume we answered all of your questions and now give me the final master prompt. So now we simply populated the master prompt with dummy data. I told him to assume that I answered all of his questions, and here can be role. Hey, I'm Michal, founder, brand owner, and Amazon seller. You are my brand co-pilot, and so on. So this would be the master prompt. Of course, I would spend some time refining this because this is one of the key assets that I would be reusing in most of my business interactions with the AI. In some cases, I would also clean it up a bit, maybe add a little bit more detail. But let's assume that this is it. And I would create a simple text file, right? So I can save it for future reference, or you can save it in your Notion, whatever. And here I will copy and paste and save it for future reference. Now I have my master prompt. So we can continue, right? We can continue with the system prompt. And now the system prompt, as we said, defines how ChatGPT should think, behave, and format the output. Right now we are focusing on the AI. And in this case, it's not always the same because it depends on our task and what we want from it. So what ChatGPT offers, it offers projects, it offers custom GPTs, and so on. There are these functions that we can work with. Now we created the project, but we also have the ability to create custom ChatGPTs, right? So where do we begin and how do we create this? So I have a simple rule for this so you know when to use what, because they're slightly different and I will cover all of the differences. So as I already showed you, we have these projects, right? I use projects for thinking and building. This is where you plan, iterate, and upload, your documents. It is an ongoing conversation that can evolve over time. And it literally serves for projects, right? So let's say you have a brand revamp project, right? You decided to change the target audience, the visual style of your brand. So this would be perfect for a project because it's evolving, you're building assets, your target customers, you are revamping your listings. So this is a great use case for a project. So we would do something like this. The first step would be creating the system prompt for this project. So we will go into our prompt generator, and I'm working on a brand revamp project for my Amazon business, and I want to create a system prompt for it. Help me write it. Ask me any questions you need, and then create a simple system prompt I can use for all future brand strategy and creative work in this. So I can say this, and then my master prompt details about my business is attached, right? I can already go here and upload the master prompt so he knows what he's working with. So I went into files, add file, and uploaded my master prompt, right? It's attached in the project files for reference. And now let's see, right? Now we are creating the system prompt, which are essentially the instructions he has in the context window for every interaction within that project, right? I know it may sound complicated, but it actually is fairly straightforward. So now he's reading the document. Now he's asking us questions how to create the system prompt, any sub-brands, lines, or seasonality themes, hard limits on price brand and margin floors per ASIN, visual style rules beyond refined, confident, minimalist, risk items to avoid. So now he's asking us questions. Again, we would tell him that for this case, he actually created a draft of the system prompt for the brand revamp project. So I will again tell him, assume I answered everything and create a system prompt with dummy data. So here we have the dummy system prompt for our brand revamp project. So I'm going to copy all of this and we can create the new project. So as you saw before, I like to create a new project. It will be brand revamp project. We will choose some visual right here. And also you can choose whether the memories should be saved in your, outside of the chats with your whole workspace or project only. In most cases, I like to choose project only, but it really is a matter of preference. And now we create the project. And once the project is created, we will be able to go here, add instructions, and copy paste this long system prompt, right? What I also then do is, just for reference, for this particular case, it makes sense to, again, upload our master prompt. So I would go here and upload the master prompt. I can potentially fit it into the instructions. But the main difference here is that the files that you upload here are accessed on demand. They are not uploaded directly into the context window. In other words, the AI doesn't know what's in these files unless you ask him directly or indirectly to access them, right? So in most cases, the master prompt, he will access it. But let's say there will be a brand voice document specifying how you communicate in your brand, your brand assets. And in case it doesn't have to get access to it, it's not going to open it. And in the instructions are always in the context window. So imagine that every single time you interact, this whole thing is in the chat window here, right? The files, they are uploaded into the context window on demand, directly or indirectly, while the instructions are always there. It's always as if you started chat with the instructions, and that's important distinction, right? But now if I have the brand revamp project, as I said, it's for like an ongoing one bigger project I'm working on, I could start uploading files, like my current product line spreadsheet. I can upload my current brand guidelines, the colors, the font, the logos. I can upload all of these things. I can upload my sales data so he knows, which products are performing better than others. So I'm uploading the context, giving as much as possible for this particular project. And then I can start working that I will say, hey, I need help updating my target customer avatar. And now if I ask a very simple question in a structure of a prompt that I wouldn't usually recommend because it's just a simple, straightforward, what we said here in our previous example, having just a straight question, we're probably not going to get a good answer. But this time we have the master prompt, we have the system prompt. So all of the requirements for the prompt engineering I described before, the role, the task, the context, the constraints, the master prompt, system prompt, all of the context is already there. So now I can finally interact with it in a very simple and straightforward way. I need updating my target customer avatar. And he reads the documents. And as you can see, it's very on point about the things that I included in my system prompt, right? So whether I'm creating new assets, asking about specific products, asking about, my previous brand voice, and ask him how I should change it, to appeal to more premium customers, for example, right? So now it's getting very specific, and the level of answers I get in this project versus me just asking straightforward the same question. Let's just see if I turn on, just do the auto and just say like, hey, I need to update my target customer avatar. So I'm just gonna get something like not very relevant to me, right? So that is the power of actually building the foundation for your AI workspace. And that's where we kind of unlock the higher value from and leverage from the AI. Now, we are not done, because now we talked about the projects, but we have also access to custom GPTs. And these are almost as your freelancers, right? They are there to do specific tasks. You know, I say these are for doing and repeating. So once you have a specific task in your business, specific workflow, you need to do again and again. And it doesn't matter as much. It's not evolving. Yeah? You just need to do the thing. So I think referring to this as freelancers is the most powerful. We can actually create as many custom GPTs as we want for specific areas of the business. So here in project, we talk about brand revamp project. But for example, for a custom GPT, we can have a listing strategist AI, right? So let me show you how this works. So if I go back into my prompt generator, and I will copy this. Hey, I'm creating a custom GPT called Listing Strategist. Its role is to help me write, optimize, and analyze product listings, including keyword research, split test ideas. Help me write the system prompt, and so on, so on. Very simple request. So we will paste it here. And in the meantime, as ChatGPT is working on this, we can go into this section into GPTs. We will go to Explore, and then go ahead into my GPTs. As you can see, I already have my Scaleport Chief Operating Officer, but we will go ahead and create a new GPT. I recommend to go to the configure section. You know, you can use a nice logo or avatar. You can name your ChatGPT, so that would be Listing Strategist AI. Here they could be a short description, optimizing listing performance. And now we have a few things here. Instructions. We already know that this is where the system prompt goes. We have conversation starters. That's essentially a button that appears at the beginning of the interaction. So we can kind of pre-program it in a way that we don't just have to write something. We can have these buttons. So we can have create listing. There could be analyze listing performance. Right? So when someone starts a conversation, they can click on these buttons immediately. We have knowledge. This is where it's similar with the project, right? Where we upload the project files. These are where we upload files that the custom ChatGPT can get access to, again, on demand. It's not automatically uploaded to the context window. ChatGPT can access them if we request them directly or indirectly, right? So if I would have, again, my customer avatar here, if he needs to create a listing, he would refer to the customer avatar. But if he's analyzing listing performance, looking at data in a spreadsheet, well, he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't need access to the customer avatar, so he saves him some time. So we have here the instructions, and here, if we can see, for listing strategies. Here's your system prompt for the listing strategies custom GPT, designed to fit seamlessly with your master prompt context and ensure consistency. So as you can see, he already, in my prompt, the builder, he has access to my master prompt, so he's generating this. Suddenly we have the role. You are a listing strategist, Michael's expert partner for Amazon listing optimization. Then objective, maximize organic visibility, click-through rates and conversion rates through data backend keyword integration, conversion-focused copy, and so on. Then we have the context, the workflow, the output style, the tone, and additional capabilities. So as you can see, again, I would do a little bit of refining before I would upload it, but this is actually pretty good already. So I will copy it and go ahead into my instructions. And now every time I interact with this, he has access to this prompt. So he's operating again as he would prompt him like this every single time. And I would also upload the files here, my master prompt, so he has access to it. I can potentially upload it here, right? That depends what type of AI we are creating, if he really needs access all the time to all of the information in the master prompt. So in some cases, I would recommend it. So he would have system prompt and the master prompt would go above that, right? Very simple. It's in the markdown formatting, right? So it's beautiful. Everything is structured, so I can open it and see the full prompt. And now, when we go here, as I said, the knowledge files, they can be uploaded here. Let me jump in here. So as we uploaded the master prompt, we can also select the recommended model. I would recommend ChatGPT 5 Thinking. I would also recommend Code Interpreter and data analysis, that it allows us to analyze large data sets like your spreadsheets and Amazon report. And now there's one very beautiful function, which is a little bit advanced. But the beauty of the custom GPTs is that we can specify and basically program actions. As you can see, actions here. It's different from the buttons here that are the conversation starters. I can go create new action. As you can see, this gets a little bit intimidating, and we are not going to cover this in the video because I'm going to create another video about this. But what this allows us essentially to do is specify, give it some capabilities. And in these capabilities, we can give it actions that are essentially API calls. And long story short, what you need to know about API calls is that it allows you to interact with other tools. And they have some nice examples. So if we go, for example, this pet store, what they have here, we can give our AI some capabilities that are the API calls. And one of them is get inventory, right? And if we would test this, it's essentially an API call to another software that returns data into our ChatGPT, right? So if I do this, it's a little bit advanced, but if you would do this for your business, you can essentially get access to other tools and have API call, let's say your inventory manager, to send an API call to get an inventory report directly. So you don't need to go download the report, upload the file. And as you can see, it can basically get access to it through an API call. But as I said, this is a little bit advanced. You don't need to do it now, but keep in mind that this capability is here, that we can specify as many actions as we want, right? Very, very powerful. I want to stress out that this may seem a little bit tedious to set up the structure. That's why I only recommend doing it for the large projects in your business, right? If you are like, hey, I'm coming up with a new title for my product, or whatever, my brand name, you don't need to create all of this structure, right? This really makes sense for areas for recurring, high impact workflows and large projects like brand revamp, right? Where you are going through multiple steps on an ongoing basis, or you have very well-defined workflows, which again, you should, in your business that you do on a recurring basis and create custom GPTs for that. Now, we will get into a very nice section where I have a few tips and tricks. I assume that most of these you don't know about, but they are very, very powerful, right? Use ChatGPT like a pro, my tips and tricks. I also want to stress out a little disclaimer that you will need the paid version of ChatGPT for some of these functions. That includes the ones we already covered, which I would highly recommend, right? It's a small fee to pay for this level of leverage we can create in our business. So let's take a look at it. Use ChatGPT like a pro. Number one, you can connect MCPs. MCPs are essentially external tools and files where we allow AI to interact with other tools. The API calls are kind of advanced, right? You need to write the code and it's very complicated, essentially. But what we can do, we can connect MCPs. And I have a whole new video about connecting MCPs and how all of this works. But what you need to know is that there are a few already created connectors in ChatGPT, right? The connectors are the MCPs. And there are some available connectors, not in all locations, like in Europe, for example, where I'm recording this, we don't have access to a lot of these yet, but the trend is clear. There are more and more being added. So for example, if I go into back into my ChatGPT and go into the section settings, I go into apps and connectors, you can see that, for example, I can connect to my Gmail, right? So I can then ask ChatGPT to fetch emails from my Gmail. It is very simple. I can connect my calendar. I can connect my Google Drive, right? It's very simple, very straightforward to do that. So I can create a new chat and ask him like, hey, summarize all of the emails I received today, and I will get the answer, right? But what's more important is that we can also connect custom MCP servers or MCP gateways that allows us to get access to many more tools than we have here in official connectors from ChatGPT. Because you can see, like, it's powerful, but it's a bit sad because like how many things are actually there? Calendar, Drive, right? Not great. So there are these services like Pipedream, we can go ahead here and see this beautiful platform that allows us to essentially connect to all of these tools like Google Sheets, Notion, Shopify. As you can see, there are thousands, like 3,000 APIs, right? So whatever you want, there can be Asana, you can see your ClickUp, everything is here. Whatever you're thinking, Epify for scraping, whatever you need, it's probably there. And connecting it is actually very, very simple. I want to say that this function is quite new, so it's not as, sometimes it doesn't work as well yet, but that's if you want to be ahead of the curve, right? You need to understand how to do these things. And in order to do that, I would really recommend you to watch the video that I will link in the description below, because there is a lot to it, right? And this is one of the tips that you should really understand how this works. There is a guide on how to connect this, right? You will need your MCP server URL, and there is described exactly how to connect this. And the beautiful thing is that Pipedream is free. So we can set up our account and get access to the tools we choose. So let me quickly show you how easy it is, right? So I will hop into my ChatGPT, go into settings, go into apps and connectors. And what you need to do, since this is pretty new function, to add these custom MCPs, you will go to advanced settings and you need to turn on the developer mode, right? It's all like scary warnings, but it's not really, right? You just turn this on. You need to be aware of some security when you're setting up MCP service. Make sure that you trust the provider, like Pipedream is a huge company, right? So I use these, no issues. And then once we update the advanced settings, we can go to enable connectors and we can go create. So here we can actually add a custom custom MCP server. And Pipedream specifically is a gateway that gives us access to many other tools through this one. So I would add this, URL. I would add it here. I would add description, name, description, what I use it for. And once I would add it, as you can see, I already have the Pipedream MCP here, which kind of corresponds with what I have here on my account. And I have access to my Notion, to Epify, that's for scraping, and to my Google Sheets, right? So then every time I interact with AI, I can use my Pipedream MCP and say, go to my spreadsheets, go to my Notion, and I can start interacting with it. Now, it's not perfect, but it's getting there. And I think it's just really powerful, especially if you understand the tools you use and combine it with everything we talked about. Your projects, so you connect your MCP servers into your spreadsheets, so you don't have to always upload the files. You just fetch the Google Sheet directly, like, hey, go to my Google Drive, or you send him the link and he has access to it, right? It's a beautiful feature. And as I said, I go into more detail in my other video, which I will link in the description. Now, the next tip is to use knowledge files as modular prompts, right? That sounds a bit confusing, so let me explain. For repetitive workflows where you go through multiple steps and you don't do that every single interaction, like let's say if I go back into my, let me actually turn off the developer mode because we're not going to need that. Yes, and now we go here into the custom GPT. Here we have the section with the knowledge files, right? We talked about this, and we have the instructions. So not every time we need to upload, we don't need to upload all of the same prompts into the system prompt. In other words, if we want this AI to do, let's say, 5 different tasks, we don't need to have how to do the specifics for all of these tasks right in the system prompt. What we can do is that at the end of the system prompt, let me actually open a new one so I can explain this a bit better. So it could be like, you are a listing strategist. And his ability, let's say, is to create new listings. His ability is to analyze a CSV file full of reviews, right? And it can have multiple skills. It can have 4, 5, a lot of these actions we wanted to take. But maybe we wouldn't fit all of these into the system prompt because it would be super long. And as we said, we don't want to kind of dilute the context window, because now it starts forgetting, it starts hallucinating. So what we can do, it's like you have access to 5 actions. And here we could upload the modular prompt. Similar way we have our master prompt in a separate text document. We would simply have a text document that says how prompt create new listing, right? And this file would include, again, a very structured prompt on how to create new listing, essentially in steps like go number 1, analyze this keyword list. Number 2, generate title in this way. Number 3, populate bullet points like this. So, and we would then upload it to the knowledge files, right? And then when we would ask him, hey, create a new listing, he goes into the file and follows the prompt as it is. So you can essentially use it as a modular prompt, as essentially an injection that allows you to have 10 different actions as a modular prompt in the knowledge file, right? So this really enables you to then have your Listing Strategist AI, as we discussed that he has like 3 actions. We can very much specify every single action that he's going to take in the knowledge files as the module prompt that he will upload every time we ask him to create a new listing, right? This is very powerful because suddenly you can have so much information packed and workflows essentially created for this particular GPT. The next one is using a canvas. I'm not sure if you ever used a canvas in ChatGPT, but it is very powerful. If we go here, we will select again our thinking, our extended thinking, and we will even select the canvas, right? So we can say write a breakdown of what a review analysis should include for an Amazon product. And since he's creating it on a canvas, we will see that we can then interact with the text he created, we can make changes and so on. So let's give him a second to generate this. Now we can see that he created this breakdown of an Amazon review analysis on a canvas, that it's not a regular reply, right? He's writing this. So once he's finished, we can actually go and open the canvas, right? So he's still writing, and it enables us to directly make changes. It is like an interactive, Google document or Notion page where we can highlight things and specifically ask to change these areas. It's very powerful, especially when it's something we are iterating on, right? Let's say like an email campaign, and you want to make little tweaks. So every single time you make a tweak, you don't want the AI to rewrite the whole thing. It's like, hey, change this sentence. No, you go into a canvas and you highlight this and say, hey, change this a little bit, right? There are also predefined things what we can do. We can ask him to add emojis. We can increase or decrease the reading level, right? There are a lot of things we can do on the canvas, right? Adjusting the length and so on. It is more for writing, but even when we are creating the plan, when we said we kind of want to trigger, the plan first approach. So when we have some big task in front of us, and we say like, hey, let's plan first. We talked about the expansion from US to UK. Help me draft the plan first. So open it on Canvas and say like, hey, step 3 should be, after this step. Let's make this change. You make the changes and then say, let's go. Let's put it in action, right? So very powerful to use the Canvas. Because this also reminds me and brings me to the next point, which is that ChatGPT can generate interactive dashboards, right? What this means is that the AI can write a code and it can preview the code to essentially create interactive apps right within your ChatGPT, right? So if you have a data set, reusable or not, the ChatGPT can create the app and show you and visualize the data. So in the same example that we had, let me scroll up here, when we ask, write a breakdown of a review analysis of an Amazon product should include, that's what we did now. He created this, and then we ask him to turn it into a React dashboard skeleton I can reuse with any CSV. Open in Canvas so I can preview it, right? So we defined what a review analysis should include, and now we are asking him to create React code we can preview live. So what this means is that I then made a few iterations here, but I want to show you the original version. We have some code, right? That's a bit complicated. I don't know what to do with it, but I can click preview and we would have a dashboard where I can then go and upload my CSV file, my review file, and it will run the analysis, the total reviews, the average rating, and I can see these things. So I can essentially create a quick one-off analysis. And again, I will make a complete separate video about creating apps for your ChatGPT. But imagine uploading your business reports, your SQPR, reports, your inventory reports, whatever you have, any Excel file, you can just put it there and say like, hell, help me visualize the data in a nice dashboard, and make sure to refer, React code and make it in a canvas so I can preview it, right? So this is very, very cool functionality. So I would click upload, have my file, and upload it right there. Next recommendation, next tip is to clean up your memory. This one is not as exciting, but as we talked about polluting and diluting, your context window, the memory you have in ChatGPT when you go to this section, let me just open a new chat. If you go into the section settings and you have into personalization, you have memory and you click manage. I'm not going to open this because I have a lot of personal stuff there. But when you click manage, you see that there will be saved a lot of memories that the ChatGPT is saving, like across conversations. And over time, there will be things that just not relevant anymore. As you can see, once I was making a video and generating images, and there were like, hey, he wants Disney cartoon style illustrations. Like, yeah, I wanted that once, and this is not something you should save. So sometimes, once a month you can go and clean up the memory, so only the most relevant details about you are included, because this is kind of on top of your master prompt, system prompt, and so on. So you want to make sure that there is no nonsense saved. Maybe you quit your job and you're now working in a new one and it still refers to you as someone else, right? And lastly, this one is very cool, is using scheduling tasks to create micro automations. Because if you go to ChatGPT, there is a section for schedules. You can create scheduled tasks. So you can be like, every Monday, remind me to do this, let's say, or at the end of the day, help me plan my next day, interactive, essentially trigger an interactive chat with the AI. But what it can also do is that we can combine it with projects, right? So there are some recurring reminders, recurring tasks, and we can combine it with the MCPs that we connected. Unfortunately, only the official ones work in the schedules so far, but it should give you an idea, because we can create micro automations. As I said, the MCPs essentially allow you to take actions in other software, and suddenly we can predefine an action that happens on a regular basis. So if we predefine an action to interact with other tool, what can happen is like, hey, every Monday, download this report and do X, Y, and Z. And you are creating micro automations. Very simple, very straightforward. So if I can go here, I would go into my projects and I can see scheduled tasks, right? So I can put something like here, scheduled task. And in the scheduled task, we are not going to need extended thinking here for this one. It's like, hey, can you create a scheduled task to summarize my emails once a week on Monday at 8 a.m. So now he created the task to summarize my emails every Monday at 8 a.m., highlighting key threads, action items, and follow-ups. Because he has access to my Gmail. Thankfully, that's an official MCP I can connect. As you can see, I can also turn on the desktop notification. So every Monday, I would receive a summary. So this is like a glimpse of the future. Once we are able to connect more tasks, it's like every Monday, summarize all of my Asana tasks, and then send me an email with the summaries, what I need to do that day, and so on. You can create these micro automations very easily. And then you can delete, pause, edit, so you can see the task, how it's scheduled, and also see the schedule of all of the tasks that are here, right? Very, very useful. Now, Let's combine all of this, what we learned today, because you learned how to prompt, how to create the structure, how to create custom GPTs projects. But the real leverage comes from you teaching this to your team. Send them this video, make sure they watch. Because the first step is to do an AI audit. Really revisit all of the workflows you're currently doing in your business and identify the few, the 20% of workflows where you can leverage this, where you can create your custom GPTs and start building this out. The audit can be simple. I like visuals, create a flow chart step by step to see how what everyone is doing in the business and identify the areas where we might benefit from leveraging AI. Or it can be as simple as this: just go sit in Excel, write down the tasks you are accountable for. Every single team member should do that, and then sit and identify the ones. It's like, hey, this could be a custom GPT. Generating new product ideas, that could be one. Maybe some things not worth it to create this structure, but in most cases, if you identify the top 6-8 routines, just pick the 3 most impactful ones and create the custom GPTs around this, so you can start streamlining and implementing AI into your workflow. So it's not just this little thing on the side, it becomes an integral part of your workflows. So if we recap this, you would have this AI architecture, and we actually help to build this for sellers right now, where we build the master prompts for every single person in the business, right? We build the system prompts for the custom GPTs. Those are your AI freelancers, your custom projects, right? Then when we have the custom GPTs, as we said, a little overview, right? We have the knowledge files. Let's say in your listing strategies, you will have your customer avatar, brain voice, potentially the API calls in the future, right? Just a reminder, you cannot create scheduled tasks and cannot work with MCPs in custom ChatGPTs yet. Creating custom projects, right? This is what we covered. Here you can work with the MCPs like your Google Sheets, your Gmail, right? So once you know about this functionality, suddenly so many possibilities will unlock, right? Whether it's creating custom GPT with knowledge files as modular prompts, your listing strategies can create listings and analyze Amazon reviews you scraped. It can analyze your SQPR reports, your brand analytics, and you start giving this and building the foundation. Because most people get stuck at the stage where I need to analyze this, I have this file, so I go to ChatGPT and just chug it there and hope for the best, and then complain that it sucks and it's not useful. But if you build the foundation, you will see that the results you get are simply 10 times better. And that's it for the video. I recommend you to check what I call the AI Agent Resource Vault. I've been into this rabbit hole of AI for a long time, so I'm gathering all the resources, the tools to use, the videos to watch, the other creators to watch their videos, and also some of the builds we create, some of the automations. I'm just putting everything into one place, constantly updating it, so you can get access to it by clicking the link in the description. And the next video to watch is about Claude skills. Because even if we do all of this for ChatGPT, which is amazing, I still believe that as of now, Claude has the upper hand in terms of business use cases. So take a look at it. You'll see how Claude works compared to ChatGPT and how we can essentially build the same structure in Claude. And I believe, in my personal opinion, that Claude is currently better for business. So go ahead and watch it now. I'll see you next week. Bye.